All right, friends. We are talking about negative self-talk today for Mindset Monday. I feel like we should just start it the same way that we always do. I have a couple questions, and then I have a couple, well, I ended up finding so much stuff on negative thinking, like different thinking patterns and where it comes from and different examples of it, which I all think are really cool and interesting. So if anyone is new here and doesn't know, every Monday we do a Mindset Monday talk where we talk about a different topic relating to your mindset. So, and each month is a different theme. So our first month, we had fresh starts and goal setting for January, and we talked about things like overcoming the fear of starting and how to set goals that you'll actually stick to and stuff like that. So February is about self-love and confidence. So then this week is about turning negative self-talk into positive action. And then next week is going to be how to celebrate small wins. And then next week is all about productivity and focus. Because I don't know about any of you guys, but the January, February has been like, you know, I don't even have words for it. It's just a face. It's like a, yeah. They've been months and they have happened. And now we have the option to have more months to have better months. For today, we have turning negative self-talk into positive action. I'll kind of just start with what self-talk and what negative self-talk looks like and kind of where it can come from. And then have a couple questions for us to chat about. And then I have the tips to work on it. So negative self-talk in general, I think it comes from a lot of different places. I saw one thing that was talking about the 3 C's is a big one. So comparing, criticizing, and complaining. So this idea of like, if you're comparing yourself to somebody else's life and you're like, oh, well, they do this so much better than I do. Like that's a form of negative self-talk. Criticizing yourself, like putting yourself down with harsh or unfair judgments about your self-worth. And complaining, like focusing on only the negative things in a situation without taking any steps to improve it and just being like, well, this just sucks, you know? So a lot of times negative self-talk, you have the 3 C's. And then I also found something that talked about all of the different types, and in a bunch of different places call them different things, but they kind of have the same essence, essentially. Like they all kind of mean similar things. So they say that like not all negative self-talk is the same, right? Like you can have negative self-talk, but it can look very different and it can be in different ways. One example is catastrophizing. So saying like everything is a disaster, and anytime something small is like inconveniencing you, you kind of blow it up into like the worst possible outcome. So like if you lost your job and you're like, I'm never going to find a job again and I'm just the worst. Like that's kind of that idea between catastrophizing. There's 8 of these. So personalizing, being like, it's all my fault. So taking blame for everything. Because a lot of the times when problems go wrong, it's not usually just your fault. Sometimes, maybe, sure. But it's still, a lot of times there's a lot of other moving pieces within that. And you aren't the only person that's like at fault for it. And so making it seem like it is all on you. There's the idea of overgeneralization. So taking something that could be small and then like blowing it up and being like, well, I'm just a complete failure. Like I missed this one appointment. So me as a person, I'm just a terrible, terrible person because I can't make it to any appointments on time. Right. And so you're taking one little setback and you're turning it into like this eternal losing streak. And that kind of can make your perspective, it's narrowing your perspective and it can limit your growth a lot. There's filtering. I like the way that they word it. They talk about how it's about like focusing on like one cloud in the sky full of silver linings, and that also skews your perspective and it blinds you to any positive progress. So you're just like, wow, this year was horrible, rather than because you're just focusing on the year sucking. But then if you like took the whole year into consideration, you're like, oh, well, I actually completed this project, or I hit this goal, or I did this thing. But instead of seeing all those little silver linings, you see it as one negative thing. There's polarizing. So like this idea of things being black and white. So it's either like, I either did this thing or I didn't. And a lot of the times it's a scale. Like sometimes it takes time and you'll get there. Like say if you started streaming and you had one stream and it didn't go well and you're like, well, I suck. And it's like, okay, but you gave it one chance. You're killing it or you're not, and you have to give it that time. And it can be really hard too, because then your life is just this emotional roller coaster of black and white of like either you did it or you didn't. Mind reading. So assuming that you know, this is one of my, I heard this TikTok recently of like judgments are almost always your own thoughts put on other people. Like if you assume that you think someone doesn't like you or is thinking something about you. Like if you text a friend and they don't text you back and you're like, oh my God, they're mad at me or they hate me or whatever it is, but really like they were just busy. But you were assuming and creating these negative thoughts about something that you actually don't know the truth of. So mind reading can be a big like negative place and can breed a lot of like unnecessary anxiety. There is fortune telling. So this idea of assuming things are negative without even knowing yet. So like one of the quote that they have is, I always mess everything up and today is no exception. Forecasting doom in your future all the time is a big negative thing that like sets yourself up for failure before you're even starting. There's should statements, and that's a really big one. So like, I should go to the gym, rather than, I read a book somewhere that talked about how you should either say, I can go to the gym, or I won't go to the gym, or I'm going to go to the gym, or saying words that are actually action rather than saying like, if you should do something. The quote in the book, I think it was Marie For, I can't remember her last name, but she was like, you need to just stop shoulding all over yourself, avoiding those should statements, and then emotional reasoning, like telling yourself from past experiences, like, I'm just always going to be miserable, thinking a certain way and being like, well, that just must be true. Like my feelings are fact. Like I am sad right now and I'm just going to be sad forever. And it just creates that cycle of, I talk about this a lot, where like if you can get into positive thinking, it's that spiral of like, I'm being really positive and that makes me want to take care of my body, which makes me want to like go outside and go for a walk and makes me want to eat healthier. And then that positively spirals. And then there's the negative spiral of like, if you are telling yourself that things are not going well or having these negative emotions, then it just continues to spiral in a negative way, obviously. So those are like the big like 8 negative thinking patterns, or like the 3 C's of like what are very common with negative thinking. So then opening up to you guys, I'll catch up on chat, say hello to anyone who just popped in here. But my first question that I had was, what's a negative thought that you feel like you've overcome, and what was the best way for you to overcome that? Or how did you do it? Gaze that I'm pretty useless. You've beaten all my friends that used to push that agenda in their favorite game, League. That's how you overcame it? Just being better in League and like, you know what? I'm not useless. Honestly, I think that's a tough question because a lot of us haven't necessarily overcome. Maybe that's another question. Does anybody have negative thoughts that you are kind of stuck on, that you feel like come up a lot in your life? I think for me, a lot of my negative thoughts are around streaming. So some of it is the imposter syndrome of like, you know, why am I not good enough? Or I'm just a shitty streamer. And a lot of it, logically, I know is not true, but I still feel that way, if that makes sense. And so I'm still working on how to change that. Brock, every day, still having some of those negative thoughts. And Stretch, just life overall, never gonna get anywhere. Yeah, and it's a nightmare being fatalistic, but I'm too used to things not working. Well, but so that's kind of some of those negative thought patterns, right? Like being like, oh, well, things have not worked in the past, so why would they work in the future? So I think some of that is recognizing, and honestly, the biggest thing with negative self-talk is realizing that you're doing it first. Because sometimes I think there are people that go around their life saying everything in a really negative way. Does anyone know someone like that, where they just share a lot of negative things, but they don't, like, you don't really see them acting on it, and you're not even sure if they're aware that it's a negative? It's just kind of like, oh, well, this was awful today, or this sucks, or... Because I've had people like that in my life where it felt like everything they said was negative, and no matter what I said or tried, it felt like they kind of viewed everything that way. And Stretch, that's where my silly sense of humor comes from. It's just started to cover up my less happy self. And now I've just turned into a silly, sarcastic jester. It's kind of sad if you think about it. Not your situation specifically, but I think a lot of us do things like that, right? Like people that are hurting, a lot of the times they cover that up with either humor um or some people turn kind of into assholes on the internet, right? Like there are people that take a feeling, which I don't think is always, sometimes it's like hurt or sadness, or I think of these as almost like gentle feelings in a way, but they get made into something that is really abrasive. It's that like same kind of concept of not wanting to face something, so we end up putting up these walls. And people used to treat me as a counselor. They would always share their negative shit against my will, and me being nice listened, even though I didn't want to. Brock, that's such a big one too. There is definitely like, I think it is okay to have friends that you are able to vent stressors to every once in a while. If you go, hey, do you have some time to listen? I have some stuff I want to get off my chest. And have somebody that's willing to listen if you have a lot of those thoughts and you just want somebody to process it through with. But if you're somebody that like, sometimes your negative thoughts can pull down other people too. And it being really careful and being mindful to not always constantly just kind of like throwing those negative thoughts everywhere, I think is something that can be really important. And like you said, Brock, it's like you're nice and you're like, okay, yeah, no, I'll listen. But sometimes it's hard for you to hear. And I think that's also where it comes to like that idea of energy vampires, being surrounded with people that feel like they're taking more energy rather than kind of giving energy. And Kev, yeah, I mask everything with laughter. It's how I cope. Yeah. All my life energy vamps. I'm so sorry to hear that, Brock. And that's really tough too, because you're like, I have these things that I want to express and I don't know how to express them. And the people I'm trying to express them to, it doesn't feel like they listen. Is that like you're that person, a friend who listens to people too? Yeah. Well, and that's like partially why I like doing these Mindset Mondays and creating this space, because even if it's a very small place and we're talking through chat, hopefully you feel like you're able to share some things and maybe it helps get it off your chest a little bit. An omen, a negative thought. I constantly think about what to do to conquer the chronic headache I experience. It's hard to put it aside as it's present always, so I have a hard time with it. I don't know how to fix the situation. It's a spiral, damn it. Any advice? Yeah, and I mean, I think that's kind of the whole thing that we're going to be talking about, omens. And I do have a bunch of tips with how to stop the negative talk. I think just right off the bat, my first reaction to that is I think it's important, like things like that, you kind of can sometimes get caught in this push or pull between being like, here's this thing that is really frustrating. Like I can't imagine having a headache all of the time, right? And being really frustrated by it and then being like, okay, I'm trying not to be bugged by it. And I think that sometimes it's okay, right? Like there's a line between not being negative about it, but also sometimes allowing yourself to be like, this sucks and I'm sad about it or I am frustrated with it. And I can honor that and I can be gentle with myself. And then I can be like, despite that, here's what I'm going to think about it, or here's what I'm still going to do with my life anyway. I think the big thing with negative thoughts too is not letting it be all consuming. Like for example, I've talked with people that have that negative thought of being alone forever. I think that can be a really big one, especially for whatever reason. I think with things being more this online world, that kind of comes up a lot with like, oh, I'm never going to find anyone, or I'm going to be alone forever. And I think the biggest thing with that is it's kind of like we create our own reality. So if you tell yourself that constantly, if you're like, I'm going to be alone forever, then your likelihood of you going out to meet people at wherever, the gym, a bar, a restaurant, like even getting on dating apps, like the likelihood of you doing things that would help you meet somebody, if that's something you want to do, is a lot lower. And so sometimes we're almost like self-fulfilling prophecies that if we get stuck on these negative thoughts, we end up creating more of the same thing. So I think it's finding this balance of not getting trapped by your negative thoughts, but also being gentle with yourself and allowing yourself to still be frustrated from time to time. Like you can't just force all of the feelings away. I think that's sometimes we want to feel good all the time. So it's like, oh, well, how do I not feel this way? And it's like, well, sometimes you have to honor that. Sometimes you have to be like, well, I don't feel great. And I'm still going to take some time to cry about it and be really sad and be really upset. And then I'm going to keep moving on with things. I think a lot of times we bottle a bunch of those emotions up, and then it kind of like it builds and builds and builds and builds. And then sometimes comes out sideways and gets even harder to deal with. And Keith, it doesn't take a lot to help us feel like we're not alone in feeling the things that are weighing us down. Sometimes it just takes somebody being like, hey, do you need a hug? Or like, do you have anything you want to share? Part of the reason I like doing this here too is if I can say this here, and then if everyone in chat goes and does that to somebody else, right, then I think the world ends up being a little bit of a better place. Like all of us just get a little bit better at supporting each other and the people around us. I don't know. I like to think of things in that way. But I'm pretty sure that's the source of why I hate people in general, but I've always hated dumb people. I mean, I think one thing that I like to think of too is anytime that I'm really frustrated with somebody, sometimes, and it's not always the case, sometimes there are people that just, they're however they were raised or their brain wiring or whatever, you're just not going to meet them on the same page. But I always like to assume that people just don't know or they don't understand. Like I like to err on the edge of teaching first. Like if somebody crosses a boundary that you have but you haven't stated it, being like, hey, like that makes, like, that's really uncomfortable, that doesn't make me feel good, rather than just being like, fuck you, fuck off, right? Like for me, how is anybody supposed to learn without there being a little bit of that like compassion and grace? And I think it's important that we work on that both with other people but also with ourselves, because I think sometimes we can be a lot harder on ourselves than we are on other people as well. Keith, one day we empaths will rule the world instead of whatever we have going on now. One can only hope, Keith. One can only hope. And I think that that's really important, though, too, is to not, when the world around you can be really hard, not letting yourself get pulled into that can be really tough. But I think it's all the more important for us to stay the course and to be kind. Same page, sometimes those mofos are still on a children's book. Hey, and so sometimes you got to start at the beginning, show them some pictures before we can graduate up into them chapter books, And Omen, okay, kind of find a way to open the valve and burst controlled, I guess. That seems like a thought of reason. I like that advice. Gonna try. Yeah, I mean, and not even, like, the way that I kind of think of that, though, right, is like the way you're making it sound is like if all your emotions are pent up and you have way too much and it's like you turn the valve on and it explodes out and then you're like, oh shit, and you got to shut the valve and like hold it back again. And then, oh, okay, let's release a little bit more pressure. And then I do think that it's important if you can get to that point where like you feel those feelings as they come. So rather than bottling it all up and having it feel like a valve that you're releasing constantly, you feel the emotions as they come. But if you are constantly able to do that and then check in with yourself, kind of reevaluate and change that self-talk with yourself, then it's something, and that's something that I've worked on a lot this year, and I think I've gotten a lot better at it, that like when something is bugging me in the moment, just crying and being like, oh my God, I am so overwhelmed by this emotion and I'm going to cry. And then sometimes it'll even make me laugh. Like I'll be like, oh, okay, this is ridiculous. And I'll laugh at myself. And then you'll be able to like move through it a lot easier than if you are, and damn, I'm emotional. See, and like if you're like, damn, I'm emotional today, maybe you sit there and you cry for a minute and you go like, wow, my head fucking hurts. I am just feeling really upset and I'm going to cry for a minute. And then I'm going to think of something that I can do that brings me some joy, right? Like it doesn't have to be, life doesn't have to be sunshine and rainbows 24/7. It's never going to be. And so it's kind of, I think it's really important to experience all of those things and just not have that be in a negative self-talk or a negative way, if that makes sense. And don't worry, Omens, I do have more tips for you too once we get through this first part of this. Yeah, Angie, giving the emotions the time they need and process the thing. Yeah, I think a lot of the times we'll feel hurt by something someone says, And if you're not practiced at it, you'll not even realize it and you'll walk away and you'll be like, oh, the way, actually, I think that hurt my feelings. And it can be really tough to, in that moment, be like, hey, that thing you said, that actually, like, that kind of hurt my feelings. And if you can say to that, a lot of the times people don't mean to. Like, they'll be like, oh my God, that wasn't my intention. And the better we can get about talking about our feelings too, I think the more we get our needs met. It's your favorite thing to talk about? Negative self-talk stuff? It's a doozy of one for sure. And the last question that I had before I wanted to talk about some of the tips is, how do you remind yourself of your strengths? I want to know if any of you guys have a practice or a way that you say good things about yourself. And I'm recognizing in this moment that I think I'm going to start journaling and doing some affirmators at the end of the day and writing about what I did well that day. Because I think every time even I get off stream, 9 times out of 10, Nande's like, oh, how'd it go? And I'm like, it's terrible. And he's like, what are you talking about? That was great. This was great. That was great. And I was like, no, I said this and I felt stupid and I did that. And he's like, what are you doing? Right? So does anyone have any ways of reminding you of your strength? Your memories? That's a good one. Like just remembering and just being like, you know what? This one time I did this well and I'm a badass. Brock, that's your way. You just say, I mean, that's true. I've heard you do that a lot. You remind yourself I'm Mr. Awesome. I mean, that's the affirmator. Keith, that's a tough question, right? Some of these questions, sometimes I don't think them fully through. Like I write them down and then when I'm like, oh, okay, now I have to ask myself this question. I'm like, pass? You remind myself of my strengths? Usually when I accidentally break something. You know what I mean, Stretch. See, here's that humor that you were talking about that you hide yourself behind. Angie, let's see, this is the thing that I learned recently in CBT. It's not about making the thought more positive. The goal is to make our thoughts more accurate and helpful so they fuel positive outcomes in our lives. Exactly. That's what we're talking about. Yeah, negative self-talk into positive action. I think that's a very good point. And I think I might have even said that to make something more positive. And I think it's a really good point. And yeah, because in the same way that I was saying, you know, you should express any emotion no matter what kind of emotion it is, that you don't have to say something is positive when it's not, but that it leads to some, like a better positive outcome or an action eventually, that you're not dwelling in the negative self-talk. Yeah, you don't have to lie to yourself and say things that you don't believe. Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really good point. I like that. Keith, lately I've been reflexively countering thoughts of what I'm not good at with a reminder of something I am. I like that. I like the idea of just like if you say something negative about yourself, just immediately trying to replace it. It doesn't even have to be in the same area, but replace it with something else that you like about yourself. It's sad to me that a lot of us, there's a stat, I think it's something about how many negative thoughts. I don't know how accurate the study is, but okay, yeah, there's a couple of these different ones, different studies. According to research, most people have significantly more negative thoughts than positive ones. It says they estimate suggesting up to 80% of our thoughts can be negative, meaning for every positive thought, there could be 4 more negative ones. They say it's referred to as negativity bias. Our brains naturally just focus on potential threats and negative experiences than positive ones. There's another one that says the average person approximately has 60,000 thoughts per day. And what's truly concerning is that 75% of these thoughts are negative and 95% of them are repetitive. And many are negative thoughts that are driven by our fight or flight part of our brain, which I think happens a lot. This idea of like, if we want to go real hit to the heart, like that thought of like, I am like unlovable or not worthy. I think a lot of us kind of struggle with that idea. And then everything we do would reinforce that thought of like, oh, I did this and I messed it up. Oh, I am not XYZ, right? It's crazy. It's kind of crazy to think about how much we get stuck into those like negative ruts of thinking. Isn't that such a depressing stat? I heard that and I was like, ugh. I mean, I very rarely think positive things about myself, so I understand that, and it totally makes sense, and it's something that I'm working on. After been depressed for some time now, I can confirm I have almost only negative thoughts. Yeah, and it's tough to realize that and be like, okay, well, what can I do to not even necessarily change all of it, but to introduce a little bit more positivity or happy actions or joyful moments or whatever it is, because I think life is going to be all of that all of the time. Like you can't have all those good moments without the lows. But I also think that sometimes we get a little bit too stuck in the negative ruts. Almonds, I never thought about reminding myself what I'm good in. I just kind of accepted that it's there and I don't put a label on it. Why is that? Right? Evolution, I guess. Cavemen that thought about the dangerous things all the time was more likely to survive for longer and passed on their genes. Damn you, evolution. Yeah, exactly. Like that's kind of what it's talking about is most of these things come from this idea of fright or flight. And if something happens and you're like, oh, well, this back in caveman days, this was something that would have kept you safe or kept you alive. And now we're not really getting chased by lions and bears and things, but still our bodies go into this fright or flight anxiety mode and throws a bunch of self-talk and negativity at us that is not always a good thing. And so recognizing that, I think, is the most important thing, like acknowledging it and starting to work on changing it. Octi, I like funny company, and I'm the funniest person I know. No more self-hate. You're like, I crack myself up. Who else would I want to hang out with? Keith, at the same time, that just reinforces how valuable and special it is when you can contribute to someone having positive thoughts. And Angie, yeah, it's also important to know that thoughts and feelings simply happen. They aren't right or wrong. They simply are. I think that's true. I was trying to think. I don't know if that's always, because like, what about thoughts of things about yourself though? Like say for example, like if you're like, oh, I can't even think of a thought off the top of my head. Take streaming, for example. Like, I am constantly entirely too hard on myself, and I will tell myself that I am a terrible streamer on a regular basis. We got Twitch partner, and regularly my amazing community shows up. So there's proof that tells me that I am not a terrible streamer, yet I still have those thoughts and feelings constantly. I think that there's somewhat where it's, I don't know if of labeling it right or wrong is maybe but for me, it's like there's some of those where it's like logically I know that is a quote unquote wrong thought, yet if you still have them, I don't know. Does that make any sense? I'm just kind of like, I'm thinking on that, Angie. I feel I've been reading The Whole Brainchild to better understand my kid's development for my therapist's recommendation. And it's really helped understand a few things like lizard brain and monkey brain. Yep. Big things. I feel like books like that are good for us to read to even recognize those things about ourselves, not even just your kids. Meds help keep me sane, but they won't prevent that I'll be depressed or manic. Yeah, well, and I think that's the same way in which anyone feels any feelings. You know, like if somebody goes through a breakup, it's whether you take meds or do anything, it's not going to prevent you from being sad. You are still going to have those feelings, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that those feelings are negative in their own way. But you still have the choice, right? Like you can be sad. I think that's a big thing. Like take the breakup thing, for example. One of my ways that kind of shifted my way of thinking is there was a breakup several years ago that I was going through, and I was talking to my dad about it. And I was talking about how it just made me so angry, and it made me not want to talk to anyone. I was like, why could somebody that you care about so much end up being like this kind of person? And then, you know, it makes me not want to put myself out there at all and blah, 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 blah. And he was like, yeah, but if you think about that logically, you end up doing the opposite thing that you want. Like right now you're hurting because this person feels like they've betrayed your trust or they've left you or whatever else. And you're taking that feeling and then you're like depriving yourself of any other better connection or anything else because you're angry about it. And so he had a quote, and I don't know if he got it from somewhere, but it's stuck in my brain ever since then, of this idea that like if you feel brokenhearted, rather than closing off, if you can live with a heart broken open, then your life will feel a lot more full. And sure, maybe you'll get hurt, but 9 times out of 10, I would say we end up getting hurt anyway. Even if we put up walls and we pretend that we don't give a shit, there are things that are still going to hurt your feelings anyway. But if you can be a lot more honest about the way that you feel and being a lot more open about things, I think that you're more likely to draw in the other kind of people that share that energy and the people that you want in your life than you are if you were to like close off and be like, no, I don't want to talk to anyone ever again because I got hurt. You know? Does that make sense? That was side tangent. True. I think that happens to every streamer where you think that you aren't good enough, but the community always proves you wrong 9 times out of 10, right? Like, it's not a right thought, but yeah, Angie, exactly. That's why you have to catch those thoughts and check them again once you do know, and then change them to create positive change. And maybe right or wrong isn't the right word for it, but maybe, I don't know. There are thoughts that I have that I know are wrong. Like, that is a wrong thought. Ooh, I like that. I like, maybe it's not right or wrong, but this idea of thoughts being inaccurate. Sorry, my neurospicy brain gets hooked on like certain words or describing things in certain ways where I'm like, well, I think it can be, but I like that idea. We're going through it. It's part of it is it's nitpicky, but I like my brain. Sometimes it's that idea of when I used to teach yoga, and this is a random example, but like you would tell somebody to like engage their core, and some people don't understand what that means. But then you'd be like, imagine pulling your belly button in towards your spine. Or if you imagine drawing your rib cages in towards the tops of your hip bones, like certain different things made sense to different brains. And so sometimes when I'm talking about these things or when I'm like focusing on certain words, it's really because I think certain things make sense to me or they don't. And I like talking through them too, because I think that's the case for other people too. Is that maybe you'll be like, well, I don't know if that's what I mean, or if, you say that you're a bad streamer, top left corner of your screen is proof that you're not, and that's always visible. This whole thing. Well, and that's what I'm saying though. I find a way to turn every good thought negative. It's a negative thought more than a wrong thought. We need negatives to get us to positives. Sometimes I think I just need to sit with it. Like I need to actually process it rather than just like jumping to like, oh my God, but other people do better or something. Just sit there and be like, oh my gosh, okay. Each one of these balloons is a person that cared enough about my stream or the message that I share or the people in the community to donate to this thing that like nobody is required to, and like actually sit and let those things in. I think sometimes my neurospicy brain is always going a million miles a minute and trying to pull all these other thoughts and other things that it doesn't give it enough time to like really sit with that and let it sink in. And Angie, wrong can mean incorrect or untrue, but often implies unjust, dishonest, or immoral. Incorrect or inaccurate won't have that same negative feeling attached to it. And yeah, maybe that's why I like kind of cringe at it at first, where I'm like, well, but things are right or wrong in some ways. And maybe, God, I love talking about these things because Angie, what you're making me think of is a lot of the times growing up, at least for me, I feel like I'm just doing a therapy session with my chat for myself, and hopefully you guys get something out of it. What that made me think of is growing up, I feel like I got told that I was wrong a lot. And some of that was from being neurospicy and just like not processing things. And so when I hear things as being right or wrong, it's very much like this is very black and white of like right or wrong. And correlating a wrong thought does kind of imply these really negative feelings of being dishonest or immoral. And that's something that I pride myself on. Like I am very like honest and blunt, and like that is something that I have always been really proud of myself for. It always blew my mind how people could be, I don't know the word, but how people sometimes just say what they think other people should say, and rather than just being honest about it. And that was always really, really hard for me growing up. And so I think this idea of a thought being like inaccurate or incorrect feels like for me to be like, oh, well, this thought is just inaccurate. Like it's just not right. So I'll see. I'm still doing it. And then I can work on changing it. Whereas if I say a thought is wrong, I even have like I feel it like having a wrong thought even makes it more negative. If that makes sense at all. I feel like maybe I'm just blabbing, but real, it is a pretty great community. I would agree. And Nerd Titan, hi. You're the most amazing creator I know. You're definitely my favorite. Well, Nerd Titan. See, there's no part of my brain that believes that, but I really appreciate you saying it. Angie, me too. I love this stuff. I've been into self-growth since I was 17. Same. You should see my stack of like self-help books. I freaking love this stuff. I think it's fascinating the way that different brains work. And it doesn't mean that I am good at it. And there are still tons of things that I need to work on in my own brain. I think for like Nande and I, and I've talked about it a little bit, we decided we didn't want to be in a relationship. But what's been really interesting is we've actually been getting along a lot better since then. Like with taking the pressure out of that and then learning how to have conversations with each other, we've been helping each other grow a lot more than we were when we were trying to like force this relationship between two people that felt like they clashed all the time. And it's just been really interesting. And I love just seeing how different brains react to different things, whether it is just trauma or situational or brain thought patterns and all the things. It's fascinating to me. And Angie, exactly, because when you're judging yourself over something you have no actual control over. Yeah, I think that's actually that's a really good point too. A lot of times my negative thoughts come from something that like I can't change. It's not something like it's purely based off of like other people or other things, even when I am doing my best. And I'm like, it's so unfair for me to measure my rate of success off something that I can't control. I think that's part of it though, is that I always feel like I could be doing better. I think that's a big thing. Is like even with streaming where I'm like, okay, with YouTube videos, I could be making more YouTube videos, or I should be making, right? The good old shoulding on yourself. And I think something for me that I've been working on is like, yeah, I could be making more. And also my brain gets overwhelmed really easily. And if I was forcing myself to do that, I think I would burn out and I wouldn't enjoy it as much. And so I need to take things at my own pace rather than doing what quote unquote everybody else is doing. Anxiety, Tiz, I understand, but I know my wrong thoughts can be right, but just not right for everyone because it's the wrong time. Depending on the thoughts, maybe. I think sometimes we think a thought is right, even if it isn't. Or it feels right to us, but if you looked at it through a different lens, it wouldn't be. It's crazy that our brains can think about itself. Brainception, right? There's a mindset meditation app that I use, which I haven't done in a while, so I need to use it more. It's called Waking Up. Sam Harris wrote a book about meditation, and so I use that app. And there's sometimes he does this meditation session where he talks about like, look for the one that is thinking. He's like, where are your thoughts coming from? You know, like looking for that part. And that just like breaks my brain to be like, wait, where are my thoughts coming from? Like logically, you know, it's like from your head, but you're like, you know, he talks about like, you know, imagine your sensations, or like you have this feeling here, like where does that originate from? Or like, you know, imagine if you were outside of yourself and then what would that, like, yeah. Angie, I've enjoyed the fruits of my labor since hitting my 40s. It's really nice to be on this side of the hill. I still always work to be the best me that I can be, but it's less work now than ever before. It's just maintenance now. Yeah, no, that's definitely like being in my 30s. The 20s were rough. I feel like it was constantly feeling like I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And then my 30s have been a lot about realizing that like I'm never really gonna know, and that part of life is just the experiences. And then there are still, like you say, the maintenance things. There are still things that my brain does every once in a while, and then I take a look at it and I go, oh yeah, no, that's something we can work on. But it's definitely very different. There are sometimes these reactionary things that still happen where I'm like, where did that even come from and why? And Phil, as a parent, I find it hard to tread that line between fostering a nurturing environment for my kid and helping her when she makes a mistake. We try to encourage her to make mistakes and learn from them, but she definitely doesn't like to try things until she's sure she'll get it right. It does cause some amazing things to happen, like when she started reading, but it can be hard. No, I totally feel that, right? Like it's almost like you don't want to put too much pressure and you don't want to help too much, but you also want them to experience and to learn. Death luck, I'm 24 and I have no idea what to do with my life. Yeah, it'll feel like that for probably forever. And not in a bad way, but just know that you don't have to have it all figured out. I'm 36, no clue either. Yeah, see, exactly. I'm reading a book right now. It's called Meditation for Mortals, I think. And it's all about like bracing the imperfections, pretty much. He like writes this book for people that are, you know, overachiever perfectionists that have a really hard time with the idea of not always doing. That's my personality. And like the chapter that I just read, when you can let go of the idea that you need to get things done, like when you can let go of the idea of a to-do list and instead, like, just make a list of things that you've done well. He's like, people should make to-did lists, like things that you've already accomplished rather than things you have to do, because you'll never catch up with all of those things you have to do. And if you spend your entire life just working on all these things, you're just going to drive yourself into the ground. Whereas if you can just celebrate all the little things that you do along the way, you'll live a much happier life, and you don't have to know. I'm soon to be 40, and it's not better over here. And I don't know if better is a thing. Like, if in some ways it's really freeing to realize that you don't have to have it figured out. Like, and some people do. I think some people find careers and jobs and things that they love, and that's wonderful. And some people have ADHD brains that like to try anything and everything, and that is also okay. Like, whatever your life looks like, I think the biggest mistake that we can make is telling ourselves that we have to have it look one way or another. Phil, you're 36, and I don't think there's a right answer to do what to do with your life. No right answer, no right answer, just answers. Or sometimes there's not even answers. There's just action. You just do things. And sometimes you get an answer and it feels right, and sometimes you don't, and you try something different. There's just life and the things that we do with it in general. Don't do what the world wants. Do what makes you feel alive, because the world needs people who feel alive. Yes. I love that quote. I think that's so true. Like, it's that idea of, if there's something that you want to do everything in your means to do it, because you live this one life. Why not? Phil, her current teacher can get very angry when the 7-year-olds make a mistake. Yeah, that's always kind of frustrating. She rarely makes mistakes, but it's terrified of making her angry. That's really sad. And I think, yeah, and it's crazy to think of little moments and how much that can change the development of a child, but also even for us, right? I remember very vividly, for whatever reason, when you said that, like this idea of getting angry and being scared of making mistakes. I don't know if that happened a lot when I was growing up, but I do remember being in my like teens, and I was at my mom's, and I dropped a cup and I broke it. And I picked up all the pieces, but I didn't throw it away because I didn't want to like hide it, but I wanted to make sure that I showed her, but I felt really bad and guilty about it. And I was like even thinking about this makes me like want to cry, right? And I remember showing it to my mom and being like, I'm so sorry. I broke this cup. Like, I can get you a new one. I didn't mean to, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, oh no, that's totally fine. It's a cup. They break. And I just started crying. Like, I was like, wait, I have permission. Like, I didn't do something wrong. She was like, mistakes happen. It's fine. And that was like this like, sort of feeling, you know? And so there's these little things in life that happen that either tell you that something is okay or that it's not. And everybody is raised in different ways, right? Like, somebody else could drop the cup and be like, oh, it's a cup, whatever, sweep it up and throw it in the trash and not think twice about it. But like, there's these different things that happen to everyone. And so it's interesting to look at and like where these brain patterns come from. And Angie, oh my God, same. I have the same story like that with my mom and a plate. She said, it's just a plate. I'll love you no matter what. Right? And like, it makes me even want to cry thinking about it, because like, I think that's partially, I might even cry. I think that's something that's ingrained in who I am as a person. Like, I want things to be perfect all of the time. And I show up in a way that is like, if I do something wrong, then that means that I am less than, or there's something wrong with me or whatever, right? And so this idea of something that's that small that happens, and then to have somebody react as a way that's like, that's okay, is just like a, you know? And it's something that I'm working on. It's not how I want to be, but I also recognize that I am that way, and that's not always a bad thing. And sometimes it's a really great thing. Like, I'm able to get a lot of things done at a place that I'm really proud of. And also, sometimes I think I'm a little bit hard on myself. Maybe just a little bit. Kari, I have the thing with doing what you want now versus what you want to get to learn, and then getting the block and then shutting down and not doing either. Well, what do you think that you can do to take more action then? Like, what is stopping you from doing those things? Miffed, I'm glad. Love the cup story. Heavy stuff, right? Negative self-talk. All right, I do have 8 strategies to stop negative self-talk. And the things that I looked up and stuff that I added a couple of my thoughts to. And so take them or leave them. The first thing is cognitive restructuring. So there's this idea of first recognizing it. So being like, oh, that was a little bit of a negative thought, and then challenging it. So questioning the accuracy, the validity of it, being like, is this actually true? Is this based on facts or feelings? Byron Katie's, I've mentioned this before, but she has a questionnaire called The Works. And it's basically asking, like, is this true? Like, is it really true? And like, who would you be without this thought? And so taking that thought and really working through it rather than just accepting that as fact, I think is the number one important thing. So questioning that inner critic and doing a little bit of cognitive restructuring with it. Reframing the thought. So replacing the negative thought with something that's a little bit more balanced or positive. Like, so saying like, I can't do this anymore to I'll try again tomorrow. So it doesn't mean forcing yourself to change it, or to, like Angie said earlier, it doesn't mean lying to yourself, but trying to change it into something that feels that is more positive action oriented, right? Like, I can't do this to I'll try again tomorrow or next time or whatever it is, right? You can try using like relaxation, meditation stuff. So like I was talking, the app helps me a lot. So just deep breathing, grounding exercises. When I start to get really anxious, Nande's been helping me with this a lot too. So especially with streaming things, if I think things aren't going well and I'll start to like have these panic things, he'll just come over and he'll breathe with me. He'll be like, okay, take some deep breaths, and we'll do a couple deep breaths together. And I'll be like, okay, I'm good. I'll get back to it. So really cueing these things to ground yourself and realizing that the thoughts that you're having are not always accurate. I think the second thing that can be a good strategy is doing a gratitude practice, whatever that looks like to you. For me, on my little Finch app that I have, one of my goals is to write things that you were grateful for during the day. And it leaves some bullet points and you can type out what you're grateful for. So every night before I go to bed, I write at least one thing that I'm grateful for. And lately it's been tough. Like, I've been struggling mentally. And so it's usually like one dumb thing. Nope. When I catch myself, it's not a dumb thing. It's usually one small thing. Like, I'll be like, I'm grateful for books, or I am grateful for chocolate, or something really small. But that's okay. Start there. And what's really cool is I see that sometimes when I'm having a hard day, that's kind of what my brain does. Like, it's hard for me to think of more than that. But then there's other days where I put like 10, 15 things. I'm like, oh, I am grateful that this happened. I'm grateful for this, and I'm grateful for that. And so doing some sort of gratitude practice could be when you wake up in the morning, when you go to bed, writing them down, having a note on your phone, something like that. Third one is just practicing mindfulness. So just being more aware of the thoughts that you're having. I do the same thing, but in the form of prayer. And I know not everyone does that way, but I guess it's the same conceptually. Yeah, you can do whatever your gratitude practice looks like. It is for you. So whether that is in the form of prayer, whether that's writing notes in your phone, whether it's having a mantra or an affirmation stream, anything. The fourth strategy is exercising self-compassion. So I think this is kind of like omens what we were talking about, is that like it's okay to allow yourself a little bit of grace when there are hard times. That you don't have to be positive always. Like, you can express your sadness and your frustration and your other feelings and be self-compassionate to the way you are feeling and not be as hard on yourself. Just kind of acknowledge how you're feeling and going through that. Other tips, strategies, taking up journaling. And I think what can be really important with that is journaling your thoughts and then sometimes going back and reviewing them and noticing. Like, for me, I used to keep a journal. It's been a long time, but I kind of want to start it back up again. I was keeping this journal and I would go back, and it was interesting to read the times in my life where I wasn't working as much on mindfulness and the amount of just like negative stuff that I just wrote about versus like the times in my life that I was doing really well. Like, all of my journal entries were like mindset things I learned, or like cool thoughts I had, or questions to ask myself, or like even the quality of my journaling changed. And so I think taking up journaling can be a really good way to kind of analyze your thoughts and work on that negative self-talk. This kind of is the same thing as the gratitude practice, but offering yourself positive affirmations. And I think this also goes with what Keith said. So rather than, if you have a negative thought, seeing if you can replace it with something positive, or just telling yourself positive affirmations, like just being like, you know what, I am another silly thing that Nanda and I do sometimes is if I'm being all super negative, I'm like, I'm feeling fat. And there's a little video of this little girl somewhere where she goes, I am strong. It's like the dad doing it with her, and he's like, I am big, I am strong, and I am beautiful or something. And so like if I get too negative, he'll be like, I am big. I'll be like, I am big. And so he makes me like do this whole like affirmator thing. And so whatever it looks like, it can be silly, but ways that you can get your brain to start thinking about the positive affirmations of yourself. I also said this tip already, but doing meditation. So taking some time to actually like evaluate what your brain is doing. I think a lot of times the negative thoughts and things come from the fact that we just let our negative thoughts run train without taking a minute to stop and evaluate. And meditation can be a really important way to deal with that. And then the last strategy is actually getting help with that, whether that looks like a psychiatrist or a therapist or somebody else that you can trust to talk through these things and actually rewire your brain. I've done a lot of like EMDR and other kind of techniques that have, I still would love to do more, even if I don't. I think everyone can benefit from therapy, whether you feel like you have like trauma or you're messed up or not. I think having somebody to talk through thoughts or the ways that you're thinking is pretty beneficial for most people. Those are some of the strategies. I don't know if anybody else has any good ideas. I think we had a lot at the beginning. But yeah, if anyone has any last thoughts, feel free to let me know. But other than that, that's kind of everything that I had for today. And thank you all so much for the wonderful conversations. Thanks for the therapy session today. I feel like it's just me processing through all my crazy thoughts, and then like I hope other people get some benefit out of it. Yeah, thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate you. We do these every Monday. Next week is going to be how to celebrate small wins. Each topic is related and kind of is interconnected, but I think every time we talk about something, new thoughts come up. Different people bring different things to the conversations. So I think we are constantly getting to learn and explore the ways our brains work just a little bit more every time. And so I really enjoy having these conversations with you guys. And thank you to everybody for participating. I'll see you for that next week. For the rest of us, we've got 10 hours and 47 minutes left.